Chosen one. Someone wealthy is coming for you. Not the kind of wealth you think of. Money stacked in vaults. Gold shining in the dark. No, this is different. This wealth wears many masks. It could be power. It could be influence. It could be knowledge. It could be temptation dressed as opportunity. And when it comes for you, it won't knock politely. It will arrive like a storm, demanding to know if you're ready. Because wealth doesn't just hand itself over. It tests, it seduces, it corrupts, it blesses. And the question isn't whether it's coming. It's whether you'll still recognize yourself when it arrives. Wealth arrives disguised, and that's the trick most never see. Everyone thinks they'll recognize it when it shows up. Bags of money, jewels, houses, cars, the obvious symbols of fortune. But that's not how it works, not when it's coming for you. Real wealth doesn't always shine. It doesn't always sparkle. Sometimes it looks like responsibility, heavy and suffocating. Sometimes it looks like betrayal dressed as friendship. Sometimes it looks like a chance so small you'd laugh at it if you weren't paying attention. And other times, it doesn't look like a gift at all. It feels like a burden, a weight you didn't ask for but can't escape. Wealth doesn't walk into your life waving a flag saying, "Here I am." It slips in wearing a mask, and the ones too blinded by their fantasies never notice it until it's too late. Think about it. If real wealth was obvious, everyone would grab it. Everyone would be rich in spirit, in power, in influence, in strength. But they're not. Most people miss it because they're staring at the wrong things. They think it's about cash, about status, about shiny toys. They're so distracted by the counterfeit that when true wealth shows up, they walk right past it. The chosen one is different. The chosen one notices the disguise. They feel the weight in their bones. They hear the whisper behind the noise. They recognize that what looks ordinary carries something extraordinary beneath the surface. That's why wealth comes for them, because they're the only ones who can see it for what it is. Wealth in disguise is dangerous, though. It tests you. It doesn't just hand you gifts and walk away. It makes you question yourself. It forces you to decide if you're going to grab it with both hands or let it pass by. And sometimes the disguise is cruel. It makes you doubt if it's even worth it. It might show up as failure first, as humiliation, as pain. And in those moments, most people crumble, never realizing the treasure was buried beneath the suffering. They curse their bad luck, not realizing they were standing on top of something priceless. Only the chosen one digs. Only the chosen one endures long enough to discover the truth hidden under the disguise. You have to understand, wealth is clever. It knows if it walked in naked, it would destroy you. Too much too soon burns people alive. That's why it hides. That's why it tests. It dresses itself in responsibility, in loss, in sacrifice, in temptation. Because it wants to see if you can handle what's underneath. If you can't handle the mask, you'll never survive the treasure. That's the secret. Wealth isn't about receiving. It's about proving you're ready to carry it. And most never are. They fall for the costume, or they run from it, or they collapse under its weight. So when wealth comes for you, don't expect glitter. Don't expect it to look the way you dreamed. Expect it to be wrapped in fire, hidden in shadows, disguised as something you wish you could avoid. That's how you'll know it's real. Because wealth isn't supposed to be easy. It's supposed to reveal you. It comes disguised because it wants to see if you're the kind who sees deeper than appearances, if you're the kind who understands that fortune doesn't knock on your door. It hides in the things you'd rather run from. And if you are, then when the disguise falls away, you'll stand face to face with something most will never even glimpse in their lifetimes. Power tests character more than poverty ever could. People love to romanticize the struggle, don't they? They say it's suffering that builds you, pain that shapes you, hunger that makes you strong. And yes, in a way it does. Poverty, hardship, failure, they teach lessons. They force you to adapt. They grind you down until you learn how to crawl forward with broken hands. But here's the twist. It's not suffering that truly reveals you. It's power. Because while poverty tests your endurance, power tests your soul. And most people fail. When you have nothing, choices are simple: survive or die. But when you hold power, real power, suddenly the choices multiply. Do you use it to build or destroy? Do you share it or hoard it? Do you twist it to feed your own hunger? Or do you carry it with the weight it deserves? That's when you find out who someone really is. Because power strips away the masks just as much as pain does. But instead of showing your scars, it shows your desires. Poverty exposes your limits, but power exposes your nature. The cruel truth is that most people think they'd handle power well. They imagine themselves noble, generous, wise, unshaken. They promise they'd never become corrupt, never betray, never lose themselves. But that's the great illusion. Because power doesn't ask you to become something new. It reveals what was always there, festering beneath the surface. The greed, the insecurity, the hunger for control, the fear of losing it once you've tasted it. Poverty can humble you, but power tempts you. And temptation has broken more souls than hunger ever did. It's easy to look strong when you're powerless. No one cares what you say when you have nothing to offer. Your words are cheap, your promises untested. But give someone power, even a little, and suddenly the cracks begin to show. Suddenly their voice changes, their eyes shift. Their hands tighten around the very thing they swore they'd never cling to. The chosen one, though, they're different. They don't worship power, and that's why they can carry it. They understand it's not a crown, but a mirror, reflecting back everything inside them. And if they haven't faced themselves, the mirror shatters them. That's why power is feared more than poverty by those who truly understand. Poverty can wound you, it can scar you, but it rarely corrupts you. Power corrupts because it whispers in your ear. It tells you you're untouchable. It convinces you you're above the very rules you once followed. And slowly, you stop being who you were, and you become what the power makes of you. Unless, of course, you're the one who bends the power instead of letting it bend you. That's the test. That's the razor's edge that so few can walk without falling. And when someone wealthy comes for you, bringing influence, opportunity, or control, remember, it's not the wealth itself you should be afraid of. It's the power that comes with it. Because poverty will show you how strong you are. But power will show you who you really are. And once you see it, you can't look away. Temptation hides inside opportunity, and that's the game most don't realize they're playing. When something shiny appears in front of you, when a door swings open you never thought you'd get near, you tell yourself it's a blessing. You convince yourself it's fate, luck, divine timing. But you don't stop to ask the real question. What's hiding behind it? Because every opportunity carries teeth. Every golden chance comes with claws. And if you grab too quickly, without seeing the hooks buried deep inside, you'll bleed before you even know what cut you. People love the idea of opportunity. They treat it like salvation. The golden ticket that changes everything. But that's the bait. The real trap is how it makes you blind. Opportunity promises gain, and in that promise, you forget to look for loss. You rush forward, eager, desperate, drunk on the idea that you're about to level up. And in that haze, temptation slithers in. Maybe it's the chance to take a shortcut. Maybe it's the offer to compromise a little piece of yourself for a bigger slice of the pie. Maybe it's power dressed as kindness. Maybe it's wealth wearing the mask of generosity. That's how temptation works. It doesn't knock on your door looking ugly. It comes dressed as everything you ever wanted, everything you've prayed for. And the test is whether you see the costume or fall for the show. The chosen one understands this. They don't jump at every open door because they know some doors lead to cages. They don't chase every shining thing because they know some treasures turn to ash the moment you touch them. Opportunity isn't always what it seems. It can be the sharpest form of temptation, a carefully placed illusion meant to see if you're willing to sell yourself cheap. And most do. They tell themselves, it's just this once. It's just a little compromise. But once you give in, once you trade a piece of yourself for the prize, you're hooked. Temptation doesn't need to take all of you at once. It just needs the first cut. After that, you bleed willingly. Think about how many lives have been ruined not by failure, but by success. Not by poverty, but by opportunity. The downfall doesn't come when you have nothing. It comes when you suddenly have the chance to take everything. That's when temptation has its claws deepest in you. That's when it whispers, go ahead. No one will know. You deserve this. Take it. And if you're not strong enough to see through the disguise, you'll believe it. You'll take the bite. And by the time you realize it was poison, it's too late. Opportunity is the stage. Temptation is the actor, and they always arrive together. One gives you the spotlight. The other whispers what role you should play. The question is, will you play the part they hand you? Or will you tear up the script and write your own? Most people think being chosen means never being tempted, but it's the opposite. Being chosen means you'll be tempted more than anyone else, because the higher you're meant to climb, the more traps are laid in your path. Temptation is the shadow that follows opportunity, and the two are never far apart. So when that wealthy one comes for you, when opportunity arrives dressed in silk and gold, look closer. Don't stare at the gift. Stare at the shadow it casts. Don't just ask, "What can I gain?" Ask, "What might I lose?" Because temptation won't tell you. It will smile. It will charm. It will hold the door wide open, and it will dare you to walk through blind. The disguise is perfect, but the chosen one sees through it. The chosen one knows the truth. Temptation is always hiding inside opportunity, waiting for the ones too blind or too desperate to resist. People think destiny is this glowing path, laid out in front of them like some neat little road, full of flowers and sunshine. They think when it's their time, when they're the chosen one, everything just falls into place, all smooth, all perfect. But that's the biggest lie ever sold. Destiny isn't clean. It isn't simple. It isn't even comfortable. Destiny drags you through dirt. It pushes your face against the concrete. It laughs while you bleed and dares you to keep crawling. You don't get chosen because you're lucky. You get chosen because you can survive what others can't. You get chosen because you don't quit when it's unbearable. Because you keep going when every sane voice tells you to stop. People want destiny without the struggle. They want the throne without the scars. But the truth is, every step toward what you're meant for is lined with traps, storms, betrayals, and pain. If you can't handle the fire, you'll burn before you even touch the crown. The wealthy one, the powerful one, the miracle you're waiting for. It won't save you if you're weak. Destiny isn't a gift, it's a test. Every trial you face is destiny asking you one question. Are you strong enough to carry what's coming? Because the higher the calling, the heavier the weight. Think of it this way. The storm isn't meant to destroy you. It's meant to strip you. It rips away the fake friends, the fragile dreams, the illusions you've been clinging to. It leaves you bare, raw, exposed. And in that place, you see who you really are. That's the price of destiny. It doesn't hand itself to the person you pretend to be. It demands the truth of what you are underneath. That's why the road is ugly. That's why it's brutal. Because it isn't polishing your mask. It's carving out your core. And here's the part no one likes to admit. Most people run. They beg for destiny. They cry for purpose. They scream for greatness. But the moment the storm hits, they fold. They say, "This isn't fair. I didn't ask for this." But destiny doesn't care what you asked for. Destiny doesn't negotiate. It shows up when it wants. It puts you through hell, and it watches to see if you're stubborn enough to keep moving. If you collapse, then you were never chosen. If you endure, then you prove yourself worthy. It's that simple, that cruel, that beautiful. Pain becomes the filter. The storms become the proof. Every scar you carry isn't a curse. It's a signature. It's destiny's handwriting carved into your skin, reminding you that you didn't just walk the path. You survived it. That's what separates the chosen one from the rest. Not talent, not luck, not blessings handed on a silver plate. No, it's endurance. It's refusing to stop when everything in you screams to give up. It's spitting in the face of fear and saying, "You'll have to kill me before I quit." That's why storms come before wealth. That's why trials come before miracles. Because if destiny gave you the prize without the pain, you'd drop it the first time it got heavy. But when you've bled for it, when you've been torn apart for it, when you've lost everything and still kept walking, you don't just carry destiny, you own it. And no one can take that from you. So when you feel like the sky is collapsing, when the ground is cracking under your feet, when every door is slamming in your face, don't mistake it for punishment. It's proof. Proof that you've been marked, that you're being tested, that you're being prepared for something bigger than comfort. The storm is not the end. It's the forge. And the chosen one is always born in fire. Wealth isn't always coins and gold, not always bags of money or jewels shining under some spotlight. Sometimes wealth is a person. Sometimes it's someone walking toward you, carrying something you can't buy, something you can't steal, something the world itself had to shape and send your way. And here's the twist. This someone doesn't show up wrapped in glitter. No, they come disguised, hidden in chaos, often at the very moment you're ready to give up. That's destiny's little game. It waits until you're crawling on the floor, until your faith is thinner than paper, and then it whispers, "Look up. Here they come." Now, the dangerous part is this: most people miss them. They're too busy looking at the pain, too busy drowning in their own misery, too busy cursing life for being unfair. They don't even see the miracle standing in front of them. Because miracles don't always announce themselves with fireworks. Sometimes the wealthy one enters silently, with nothing but a word, a look, a small action that changes everything. And if you're blind, if your mind is locked on the storm, you'll let them walk past. You'll lose the one who was meant to pull you into your next chapter. That's the cruelty of destiny. It doesn't hand things to you on a silver plate. It demands awareness. It demands you to open your eyes in the middle of pain, to recognize what others are too blind to see. Because the chosen one isn't chosen for comfort. They're chosen because they notice. They notice opportunities where others see disasters. They notice people of value where others see nothing. They notice wealth in the form of wisdom, guidance, love, strength. And that recognition becomes their weapon. Think about it. The most dangerous thing you can do is underestimate someone sent to you. You laugh at them. You dismiss them. You ignore the quiet power they carry. But if they were sent, it's not by accident. The world doesn't waste resources. Every person who walks into your life at the breaking point is carrying a piece of your survival, your growth, your ascension. You don't have to worship them, but you better not be foolish enough to disregard them. Because the wealthy one isn't here to entertain you. They're here to shift you, And wealth, oh, it comes in strange forms. A sentence that wakes up your dead ambition. A connection that drags you out of obscurity. A hand that pulls you up when you've been abandoned. Sometimes wealth is simply someone refusing to let you stay the same. That's worth more than any treasure, more than any vault stacked with gold. Because real wealth multiplies. It doesn't fade. A person who pours strength into you doesn't just add to your life. They multiply your future. They create ripples. And those ripples echo far beyond your imagination. But here's where it gets dark. Not everyone who's chosen sees the value when it arrives. They insult it, mock it, or worse, try to destroy it. Out of fear, out of envy, out of their obsession with comfort. And when they do, destiny laughs. Because that wealth, that miracle, that person, it doesn't vanish. It simply shifts. It moves on to someone else. Someone with eyes wide enough to recognize it. That's how you lose everything. Not because you weren't chosen, but because you weren't awake. So ask yourself, when the wealthy one comes, will you be too broken to notice? Will you be too bitter, too blinded, too distracted by your suffering? Or will you have the guts to see past the chaos? To recognize that wealth doesn't always come in the form you expect. That's what separates the survivors from the rest. They know how to see. They know how to value what others miss. They don't wait for the lightning. They listen for the whisper. And that whisper changes everything. It changes the path, the fight, the outcome. It marks the moment where the chosen one shifts from surviving to ruling. And it only takes a single person, a single arrival, a single encounter for the tide to turn completely. That is the wealth walking toward you. And whether you recognize it or not will decide if you rise or if you stay crawling in the dirt forever. The chosen one always expects wealth to come with trumpets, with lights, with the world clapping their hands and saying, "Here, it's finally your time." But that's not how it works. Wealth doesn't announce itself. It doesn't come with a parade. It comes quietly, almost secretly, slipping into your life like a shadow at the edge of the room. And the most brutal part is this. If you're not paying attention, if your eyes are too fixed on the noise of your struggle, you'll never notice it until it's gone. That's how most people lose everything. They think they're waiting for gold to fall from the sky, when in reality, gold walks right past them in the shape of a human being, a chance. A door cracked open for a moment, and then slammed shut forever. You've been told that blessings look beautiful, that wealth comes wrapped in silk, that miracles glow with light. Lies. Sometimes wealth comes in rags. Sometimes it comes as a stranger who irritates you. Sometimes as a challenge that feels unbearable. It doesn't always look like help. It looks like chaos. And destiny watches, laughing, asking, will you dismiss it? Or will you have the vision to see what's hidden underneath? Because the wealthy one coming for you might not look like a savior at all. They might look ordinary, broken even. But what they carry inside them is the very thing you've been dying for. And that's the irony. The chosen one is tested by disguise. Life never hands you the obvious. It hides diamonds in dirt. It hides kings in beggars. It hides the ladder inside a storm. And only the ones sharp enough, awake enough, hungry enough, will recognize what's in front of them. Everyone else will laugh, turn away, and stay stuck. That's why only a few ever rise. Not because they're smarter or luckier, but because they pay attention when it matters. The wealthy one doesn't just bring material riches. No, the true wealth is transformation. They bring something that changes the way you see, the way you move, the way you fight. They spark a fire inside you that can't be put out. And that's worth more than gold, because gold can vanish. But a shift in who you are, that can't be stolen. That's permanent. It makes you untouchable. But you need to understand something cruel. This wealthy one won't stay forever. They are a moment, a flash, a divine interruption. They appear at the exact second you need them, and if you miss it, you don't get a replay. Destiny doesn't recycle gifts for the ungrateful. If you dismiss them, if you mock them, if you fail to value them, they'll vanish into the hands of someone who's ready. And you'll spend the rest of your life wondering why everything feels empty, why nothing seems to work, why the doors keep closing in your face. It's because you turned your back on the very thing meant to unlock you. And here's where it gets even darker. Sometimes the wealthy one doesn't come to save you. They come to expose you. They come to reveal whether you're ready for the next level, or whether you're still chained to your smallness. They don't hand you a gift, they hand you a mirror. They force you to confront who you are, and most people hate what they see. That's why they reject them. Not because the person has nothing to offer, but because what they offer requires change, and people are terrified of change. They'd rather stay in the mud than climb the mountain. The chosen one has no such luxury. The chosen one cannot afford blindness, cannot afford laziness, cannot afford pride. When the wealthy one comes, they must recognize it, seize it, hold it, and let it do its work. Because everything you've been waiting for, everything you've been dreaming of, everything you've been suffering for, it might all be locked inside a single encounter. One meeting, one moment, one decision. That's how thin the line is between ruin and breakthrough. So if you are chosen, prepare yourself. Not for flashing lights, not for obvious signs, but for the subtle, the hidden, the disguised. Because when someone wealthy comes for you, they won't look like what you imagined. They'll look like what you need. And the only question that matters is whether you'll see it before it passes you by. You ever notice how people ignore the whispers until the scream finally comes? That's the way it works. Quiet nudges, little signs, strange coincidences, and everyone just shrugs it off, pretending it's nothing. But then one day, the message doesn't arrive as a whisper. It comes like a siren, a warning, a demand, an order. And suddenly, it's not optional anymore. It's not something you can put off until tomorrow. It's an emergency, the kind you can't run from, the kind that drags you by the throat and forces your eyes open. Whispers turn into urgent screams when ignored. At first, it's nothing but a nudge A small misstep, a strange coincidence, a late night thought you shove back under the pillow because it's easier to sleep than to listen. People collect those nudges like trinkets and call them superstition. They fold the warnings into the same drawer as fear and promise themselves they'll open it another day. But those small noises keep piling up. They don't vanish. They sharpen. They gather volume. They start to form a pattern. And if you're the kind of fool who pays attention, you can feel the pattern like a pulse under your ribs, counting down to a moment when whispers become a siren. The world has a way of letting you pretend you're safe until the last possible second. It arranges distractions, hands out comforts, fills your calendar with things that feel urgent, but mean nothing. That's the trick. Keep them occupied until the real alarm finally has to shout. And people love being occupied. They'll trade truth for the comfortable lie that the present will always be the same. They'll laugh at the first crack in the wall. They'll decorate the house with curtains and candles while the foundation quietly gives way. The whisper that begged for attention is mocked, pushed aside, wrapped in denial, until denial can't hold it back anymore, and the whisper rips open like an alarm bell. When it finally becomes a scream, there's nowhere to hide. The sound doesn't plead anymore, it accuses. It pulls the curtains back with hands that don't give a damn about your excuses. Suddenly you notice the fissures in things you loved, the stains on promises everybody pretended were permanent, the hollow heartbeat of systems people swore were forever. The scream is not polite. It does not wait for your permission to enter. It demands action. And the cruelest truth is that action costs far more than the small, sensible preparations you could have made when the whisper still sounded like curiosity. Most people freeze in that second. They clutch their routines like life preservers and hope the water will recede. They want proof, signatures, guarantees, the next form to fill in before they can move. They ask for time, for authority, for someone else to step forward first. But emergencies don't negotiate. A scream doesn't accept petitions or polite emails. It requires a body in motion right now, a hand to pull a lever, an eye to read the charred label before the room fills with smoke. Hesitation becomes a chain. And when the scream becomes the only language left, all the hours spent ignoring the whisper look like complicity. The funny thing is the whisper was never the enemy. Your refusal to listen was. Warnings arrive gentle because mercy prefers subtlety at first. It gives you space to choose. But human stubbornness, habit, pride, they turn mercy into mockery by ignoring it until mercy must shout. When that happens, mercy and judgment wear the same voice. The choice you missed becomes a command you can't avoid, and suddenly your excuses are as flimsy as paper in a fire. The irony sits there, smoking. You were offered the chance to prepare, and instead you chose the moment of panic that now punishes you. And here's the brutal slice. The scream doesn't care who deserved it. It comes whether you were noble or coward, whether you warned others or warned nobody at all. It comes because the moment arrived. Cause and consequence are indifferent to reputation. Some people will run and call it fate. Some will stand and call it destiny. Most will clutch whatever is left of their dignity and try to bargain with reality, as if shouting louder could stitch the past back together. But bargains with the scream are empty trades. It takes more than bargaining to fix what you let rot in silence. So when the whisper starts, when that small doubt nudges you awake, don't be one of the ones who plants their head back under the pillow. Don't be the crowd that laughs at the messenger until the messenger turns into a prophet, only because the roof has already caved. Listen while it's still low and soft. Act while you can still buy time with a small choice, a small sacrifice, a small inconvenience you pretend you hate. Because once whispers become screams, the luxury of time is gone, and the only currency left is the kind you can spend with your hands right now. Not the kind you wish you'd saved up yesterday when you had the chance to hear. Emergencies leave no room for delay. That's the part people hate the most. The way it rips choice out of their hands. You see, everyone loves the idea of control. They like to think they're running their own schedules, balancing their priorities, deciding what can wait until tomorrow. It's a sweet little illusion, isn't it? But an emergency doesn't ask for permission to arrive. It crashes the door, flips the table, and suddenly all those neat little plans you built are worth less than ashes. The moment demands attention, and it doesn't matter if you're ready or not. The funny thing is, you've seen this play out in small ways 1,000 times. The alarm clock you ignored because 5 more minutes felt harmless. The message you promised to answer later that turned into a missed opportunity. The small repairs you delayed because they didn't look urgent until the whole system broke down. That's how it always works. Delay feels safe until the cost of it arrives like a knife at your throat. Emergencies are just delayed consequences, stacked high enough that they can't be ignored anymore. They don't burst out of nowhere. They're built brick by brick out of your own postponements. And when the emergency finally explodes into view, what do people do? They hesitate. They look for a committee to form, a procedure to follow, a voice of authority to sign the paper so they won't have to carry the blame. They think waiting will make the fire smaller, when in reality it just feeds it. By the time they act, the damage is already doubled. Delay becomes its own executioner, and yet most people cling to it like a blanket. Why? Because delay feels comfortable. Even when it's lethal, you can watch the panic in their eyes when they realize the window has slammed shut. The second of hesitation becomes a prison. The fire grows, the clock ticks, and suddenly the luxury of waiting has vanished. Emergencies don't care about your feelings, your schedule, or your fear. They care about action. And the cruelest truth is that action in an emergency always costs more than it would have if you had moved when the whisper first came. The longer you wait, the higher the price. That's the law. That's the rhythm. Most people beg for another chance. They say, "Just give me a little more time. I'll fix it, I swear." But time is not a negotiator in emergencies. It's the executioner. The more you try to negotiate, the more you tighten the noose. Emergencies don't trade, they take. They strip away the luxury of choice, and what's left is either survival or collapse. The faster you move, the slimmer the cost. The slower you move, the deeper the grave. It's always that simple. But look closely at the few who respond differently. When the alarm blares, they don't freeze. They don't ask for permission. They move. They know hesitation is the real killer. They've learned that emergencies don't give gold medals for being careful. They hand out scars to the ones who were too slow. These people aren't fearless. Fear runs through their veins like everyone else, but they've seen enough to know that action is the only antidote to panic. They don't wait for someone else to solve it. They solve it, or they die trying. That's what sets them apart. And here's the part most can't swallow. Sometimes the emergency is the test. Not a random accident, not a cruel trick, but the exact moment designed to strip away excuses and see what you are when all the masks are gone. Will you still stall? Still bargain? Still pray for a tomorrow that may never arrive? Or will you step forward when the fire demands it? That's the question that emergencies ask, and they never wait for you to answer politely. They drag the truth out of you in real time, exposing every weakness, every cowardice, every hesitation you thought you could hide. So when it hits, when the door bursts open and the alarm slices the air, you don't get to play the old games anymore. You don't get to shuffle papers or make promises or dream about later. Emergencies don't care about later. They care about now. And the ones who move now, no matter how messy, no matter how imperfect, no matter how reckless it looks, they're the only ones who come out the other side with something left to salvage. Everyone else gets buried under the rubble of their own delay. Most freeze, but the call isn't for them. That's the truth that rattles inside the bones of every so-called chosen one. You see it in crowds all the time. Something happens, something urgent, and people stop. They freeze like statues carved out of fear. Eyes wide, breath caught, heart pounding so loud it drowns out thought. They're not built for motion when chaos shows its teeth. They're built to watch, to wait, to hope someone else takes the step they're too terrified to make. That's why the call isn't for them. When the signal comes, it doesn't echo for the crowd. It threads its way into the skull of the one person who can't ignore it. Everyone else hears noise, but you hear a command. You feel it crawl under your skin, burn through your chest, rip the excuses out of your throat. That's why others stand still while you move. They don't understand it because it was never meant for them. They're background placeholders, shadows filling the room. And shadows don't answer destiny. Only the one carrying the fire does. It's almost cruel when you think about it. Why should it be you? Why should the burden be placed on your shoulders while everyone else gets to hide in silence, pretending it was never their job? But that's how it works. The call doesn't land on the comfortable. It skips the ones who'd waste it. It hunts for the one with scars deep enough to prove they can take the weight. That's the joke people don't see. The call doesn't pick the lucky, it picks the broken. Because the broken know how to keep moving when everyone else is paralyzed. Watch closely the next time disaster strikes. The majority will scatter or stand still, choking on their own hesitation. They'll ask for leaders, for rules, for someone to tell them what to do. But if you wait for someone else, you'll be waiting forever. Emergencies don't crown leaders, they reveal them. And if you're the one who feels that pounding in your skull, the weight of the voice that says, now, then congratulations. The room is yours, whether you wanted it or not. You can step forward, or you can choke on the same paralysis as the rest. The cruelest part is the loneliness of it. Nobody else will understand why you moved. They'll call it reckless, insane, dangerous. They'll whisper behind your back because your speed makes their hesitation look like cowardice. But that's exactly what it is. And deep down, they know it. That's why they despise you. Why they drag your name through the dirt. It's easier to smear the one who acted than to admit they failed to. So they turn their fear into jealousy and their jealousy into poison. But still, you act. Because the call isn't theirs to answer, and the weight isn't theirs to carry. This is where the fracture happens. The divide between the one chosen and the many who aren't. It's not about strength or knowledge or even preparation. It's about wiring. Some are wired to sit. Some are wired to watch. And a very small, cursed fraction are wired to respond, even when the odds are impossible. That fraction doesn't get applause, not at first. They get resistance, suspicion, hostility. Because moving when everyone else freezes doesn't just save the moment, it exposes the truth that most people never intended to rise at all. And here's the darkest irony. The frozen will always outnumber the few who move, but history never remembers the frozen. Their names dissolve in the crowd. Their faces blend into the blur of inaction. The only ones who leave a mark are the ones who broke free of paralysis. The ones who heard the call and treated it as if it were life itself. And that's because it was. Not for everyone, not for the crowd, but for the one who could feel the urgency like a brand pressed against the skin. So when you feel that weight, when you hear that voice, when you recognize the call threading through the chaos, understand this. It was never designed for the people beside you. It was never going to move the crowd. It was always going to fall into your lap, sharp and burning, because you're the one who can't afford to freeze. The emergency doesn't care about numbers, doesn't care about popularity, doesn't care about fairness. It only cares about the one who moves when everyone else becomes stone. And if that's you, then hesitation is death, because the call was only ever meant for your ears. Higher orders demand immediate obedience. It isn't a polite suggestion tossed across the table like a napkin. It's an incision that needs to be made before infection spreads. When something greater than you speaks, it doesn't wait for your schedule or your excuses. It doesn't ask whether you've had your coffee, whether you've checked your messages, whether the committee approves. It drops the hammer and expects a hand to move, not a meeting to be scheduled. People act surprised by that truth because they're trained to treat life like a calendar. Appointments, postponements, polite delays. But orders that come stamped with a force beyond your control aren't interested in courtesy. They're interested in obedience, and obedience is immediate. There's a pressure to it that tastes like iron. It presses on your chest and makes indecision a luxury you can't afford. You can practice courage in theory, rehearse bravery in safe rooms with soft lighting. But the moment a higher command cuts through the noise, rehearsals die on the spot. The voice that demands immediate action doesn't care for your rehearsed lines. It wants your body where it needs to be now. That's the cruelty and the clarity of it. The universe doesn't respect your timetable. It will force your hand, or it will break your world. And people who think they can bargain with that are always the ones left bargaining for their lives. Obedience in those moments is not obedience for show. It's not the kind that smiles for cameras or signs glossy documents. It's the kind that drags you out of bed in the middle of the night, that pulls you away from the warm safety of denial, that forces you to choose between comfort and consequence. There's a shame in admitting you were asleep when the siren sounded, a deeper shame in realizing you thought the alarm was someone else's problem. The higher order doesn't ask whether you felt called. It only asks whether you answered. And if you didn't, the wreckage doesn't care how good your reasons sounded in the daylight. Most people are allergic to the idea of immediate obedience because it removes excuses. It takes away the armor of procrastination, strips you of the moral wiggle room you use to sleep at night. If you must act now, then you must admit you were capable earlier and chose not to. That admission is poisonous to pride. So the masses invent delays, summon committees, create rituals of denial. But the order doesn't negotiate. The quicker you obey, the smaller the price. The slower you hesitate, the sharper the consequences. It's a blunt arithmetic. Time multiplied by inaction equals destruction, while time multiplied by obedience equals survival. There is also an intimacy to obeying such orders, a violent kind of kinship with whatever force issued them. When you move instantly, you align yourself with a logic that isn't comfortable, that isn't pretty, that doesn't bend to popularity. You stop asking if it's fair and start doing what must be done. That alignment changes you. It rewires priorities, shifts loyalties. People will call it fanaticism or madness because they prefer the comfort of selective morality. Do when it's convenient. Ignore when it's costly. But true obedience demands you pay the toll immediately, and the toll is never small. Consequences pile like corpses when obedience is ignored. Not metaphorically. In the real currency of lives and ruins, hesitation costs more than bravery ever does. The history of collapse is littered with those who waited for consensus while the world burned. They comforted themselves with polls, with experts, with the illusion that time would make the decision easier. It never does. Time is a predator that eats preparedness. The order you could have followed yesterday becomes the disaster you now have to survive. The irony is poetic and merciless. Your delay becomes the story people whisper about in the rubble. And then there's the loneliness. When you obey where others hesitate, you stand apart, and people will hate you for it. They will accuse you of arrogance, of seeking glory. They will call you reckless to justify their own cowardice. But the lonely position of the one who obeys is also sacred in its way. Because while the crowd debates, someone had to act, and the world was saved or damned by that single motion. The obedient are rarely thanked. Their reward is the faint relief of having done what had to be done, while everyone else wakes up to count the cost of their delay. So obedience becomes a moral test that reveals character in the rawest form. It is the clearest mirror of who you are when all the comfortable stories are stripped away. Will you step when the order demands it? Or will you let the moment pass because you prefer the safety of consensus and the illusion that someone else will fix your mistake? The choice is ugly and simple, and it spits in the face of all the polite philosophies people tuck under their pillows. There is no room for ceremony here, only for a hand that moves, a body that answers, a life that commits without waiting for applause. Understand this. The voice that commands immediate obedience isn't always merciful, but it is honest. It gives you no graceful exit, no staged alternative, no soft landing. It forces you to be real. And in a world full of rehearsed morality and staged virtue, that kind of reality is rare, terrifying, and necessary. If you hear it, you can ignore it and keep sleeping while the house collapses. Or you can answer and become the one who carries the burden that others could not. The cost is always there, but the cost of silence is infinite, and obedience, immediate, ugly, uncompromising, is the only purchase that sometimes saves. The door opens only for the one chosen to face it. It's a ridiculous image. People stand in front of doors their whole lives, knocking politely, polishing the brass, rehearsing the right words, waiting for someone else to hand them the key. They treat fate like a concierge. Tell me when to show up. But some doors don't swing for the crowd. They only unlatch for the person who smells like smoke and scars, the one whose hands are already calloused from carrying burdens no one else would touch. That's not luck. That's selection. The world doesn't call the comfortable. It calls the one who's already been tested and found unwilling to break. You can watch the masses circle the threshold like cattle, bargaining for permission. They form committees. They create rituals. They create excuses to delay the moment when someone might actually have to act. Meanwhile, the chosen one stands near the frame, not because they're arrogant, but because they've been worn into readiness by circumstance. The door knows them. It senses the weight in their chest, the way their breath hardens when a choice is forced. The quiet promise tucked under their ribs that they will move even when everything else screams to stay. Doors have memory. Stone and wood remember the feet that passed through them. And some doors remember who bled to reach them. You don't become the one the door opens for by practicing speeches or polishing resumes. You become it by surviving scenes that would have convinced a lesser person to quit. You become it by taking on the things others refuse: the phone calls at midnight, the mess no one wants to clean, the truth that corrodes relationships if it's spoken aloud. The chosen one doesn't seek the door. The door sees the chosen one and opens, because it doesn't want the delay of democracy. It opens because whatever waits beyond needs quick hands, a steady gaze, a stomach for the ugly work. It opens because there's no time to argue about qualifications when the building is burning. People resent that. They always will. They'll paint the one who walks through as reckless or selfish, as someone who stole an opportunity meant for the patient and polite. But patience and politeness are for gardens, not for explosions. The chosen aren't thieves, they're tools picked up by necessity. It's messy, and it doesn't come with applause. You don't get a medal for being the one who could do it. You get the job done, or you don't. And then the world judges you either way. The door doesn't care about their judgments. It only cares that the right hand reaches for the latch at the right time. There's also a loneliness to being chosen. The crowd watches through keyholes, gossiping about the one who answered the call, as if answering were a theatrical choice instead of a survival instinct. They whisper, they envy, they rationalize why they weren't called. Too busy, too tired, too noble to be so direct. But their excuses are just armor for fear. The truth is uglier. Most people aren't made for the moment the door demands. They crumble. They barter. They hope someone else with stronger shoulders will show up. And when that someone does, when they appear with mud on their boots and a stubborn look, the crowd is quick to rewrite the story so they can sleep without thinking about their own cowardice. The chosen one, meanwhile, knows the cost. They know that some doors close behind you and don't open again. They know what the frame takes with it when it swings relationships, illusions, small comforts. Sometimes pieces of your heart you never get back. You walk through with knowledge that the path beyond will not be kind. And still you step, because not stepping would be a different kind of death. The slow, quiet variety where regret becomes the real executioner. Which is worse? To live comfortably and be haunted by what might have been, or to walk through the door and find out you were made for the very thing everyone else denied. The chosen pick the latter every time, because they would rather be broken honest than whole and silent. And here's the sharp truth people pretend not to hear. The door doesn't open because you deserve it. It opens because something beyond needs you. Meritocracy is a pretty story. Necessity is the real judge. You might be ugly, angry, scarred, or ridiculous. None of that disqualifies you. In fact, it might be what qualifies you. The door looks for one thing: a willingness to do the hard, unromantic, often thankless task on the other side. It doesn't look for resumes. It looks for hands that won't tremble when the lever is heavy, for eyes that can hold the sight of ruin without blinking. When it finds that, it slides, it clicks, it opens. So don't stand polishing the brass, rehearsing how you'll look when you finally walk through. Stop waiting for permission that will never come unless you've already earned it in silence. The door opens for those who've been walking through their private hells and came out with a readiness that can't be taught. Be that person. Wear the scars without apology. Let the crowd gossip while you move. Because when the moment comes and the hinge screams, because it hasn't been used in a long time, the door will choose the one whose hands are already steady, the one who knows how to carry the aftermath, the one who can turn the lock without needing anyone's approval. And then it will open for you, and no one else would have lasted long enough to do what must be done. So step forward, take the key, and understand that some doors demand a particular kind of madness, one only the chosen can afford to embody. The sort that walks in with blood on its shoes and a calmness the crowd calls cruelty. Because they never learned to stand while everything burned around them, and you, who have learned, will do what no one else would. And the doorway waits because it always did, for that precise set of ruined, stubborn hands to finally reach for the latch and pull it wide enough to let the future out into the world, and then